Baal is often cast as the villain of the Bible, just another pagan god crushed under the weight of prophecy and fire. But what if everything you've been told about him is the result of religious propaganda? What if Baal wasn't a demonic force, but one of the most vital and beloved gods of the ancient Near East? To uncover the real story, we have to look beyond scripture, into ancient temples, lost texts, and myths older than monotheism itself. Baal, whose name means Lord or Master in Northwest Semitic languages, was one of the most revered deities in the ancient Levant. In Ugaritic texts from the city of Ugarit, modern-day Ras Shamra in Syria, Baal is presented not as a demon or enemy, but as a divine protector. He was the storm god, ruler of rain, thunder, and fertility. Without him, crops withered. Famine followed. Baal wasn't prayed to out of disobedience or wickedness. He was worshipped out of survival. Baal's mythological cycle is rich with drama and symbolism. He famously battles Mot, the god of death and drought, in an annual cosmic conflict. Mot represents the dry season, Baal the life-giving rains. In these texts, Baal dies each year and descends to the underworld. His absence brings drought, but with the help of his sister Anat, a fierce warrior goddess, he is restored, returning to the heavens to bring the rains once more. This seasonal cycle mirrored the agricultural realities of ancient Canaanite life. Baal's story wasn't about sin. It was about life, death, and renewal. His palace, constructed on Mount Saphon, signified his divine authority. In one myth, Baal pleads with the high god El for the right to build his own temple, a privilege not given to every deity. With the help of the craftsman god Kothar Wakasis, Baal establishes his seat of power. This palace becomes a symbol of divine kingship and cosmic order. He was the ruler of the heavens, but his power extended across land, sea, and sky. He wasn't a trickster, he was a king. Baal's cult was complex and hierarchical. Major cities, such as Ugarit, Tyre, Sidon, and even ancient Israelite territories had temples dedicated to Baal. His worship included festivals aligned with the planting and harvest seasons. Priests and priestesses maintained his temples, and kings often portrayed themselves as his earthly stewards. Baal was linked to political legitimacy, divine kingship, and military protection. He was more than just a rain god. He was the beating heart of a cultural system. In art and iconography, Baal is depicted as a warrior armed with thunderbolts, striding above the mountains. His symbols include the bull, for strength and fertility, and the lightning bolt. He was not a distant abstract deity. He was present in storms, winds, and seasonal change. When thunder rolled over the hills, it wasn't frightening. It was Baal's voice. So how did this agricultural hero become a villain in later traditions? The answer lies in religious and political transformation. As the Israelites moved toward a monotheistic identity centered on Yahweh, competing gods, especially popular ones like Baal, had to be pushed out. The Hebrew Bible doesn't just portray Baal as incorrect, it paints him as dangerous. The prophets Elijah and Hosea don't merely preach against Baal. They describe his worship as harlotry, betrayal, and a direct affront to the covenant with Yahweh. In 1 Kings 18, Elijah confronts the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. The story ends with Yahweh sending fire from heaven and Elijah executing Baal's priests. It's not just a religious contest, it's a purge. This narrative helped establish Yahweh's dominance by destroying the credibility and sanctity of Baal. Over time, Baal's image deteriorated further. In later Jewish and Christian writings, he wasn't just a false god, he became demonic. The name Beelzebub, originally a Philistine variation meaning Lord of Zebul, a high place, was reinterpreted as Lord of the Flies, a mocking, degrading title. By the New Testament, Beelzebub is equated with Satan himself. a once revered rain god transformed into the embodiment of evil. But the Ugaritic texts tell another story. In them, Baal isn't manipulating or corrupting people. He's defending them. He resides in a grand palace. He throws feasts. He weeps over the dead. He fights to bring water to the land. His relationships with other gods, including Anat and El, are complex and layered. Baal isn't the enemy of righteousness. He's the axis of life. He also plays a central role in the divine council of the Ugaritic pantheon, answering to the high god El, but asserting his own authority among the other deities. His palace on Mount Saphon symbolized his divine kingship. Texts show that Baal's authority was hard-earned, involving not just combat with Mot, but political negotiation, ritual drama, and divine legitimacy. Baal's myths reflect a society trying to make sense of chaos, drought, and seasonal hardship. This wasn't an isolated phenomenon. Asherah, a mother goddess, and once considered a consort of Yahweh, was purged from official worship. Dagon, another Semitic deity, was reduced to a defeated idol in biblical tales. Moloch, long associated with child sacrifice, was likely a misunderstood figure, distorted through polemic rather than historical worship. The vilification of Baal was political as much as it was religious. Removing him wasn't about truth, it was about dominance. It allowed the authors of monotheistic scripture to clean the theological slate and claim sole legitimacy for their God. We now know from archaeology and comparative religion that Baal worship was deeply embedded in the ancient cultural fabric of the region. Baal's rites mirrored the rhythms of rain and harvest. His myths encoded seasonal change. In a region dependent on agriculture, Baal was not a temptation, he was a necessity. Even in ancient Israel, many Israelites continued to worship Baal alongside Yahweh. This is why the Bible repeatedly mentions the tearing down of Baal's altars. It was a live issue, not a relic. The coexistence of multiple gods was a norm in the ancient Near East. The movement toward monotheism was slow, contested, and not universally accepted at first. Yet his name was stripped of all that and replaced with fire, mockery, judgment. Understanding Baal in context doesn't require rejecting current faiths. It requires acknowledging how narratives evolve. What one culture calls divine, another may call diabolical. But when we strip away the centuries of polemic, we find Baal as he originally was, a weather god, vital to survival, beloved by his people, and mourned when gone. The transformation of Baal from divine protector to demonic threat wasn't based on his character. It was based on what he represented, a rival. To solidify monotheism, rivals couldn't just be replaced. They had to be destroyed. Today, Baal's name is mostly remembered through biblical denunciation, but the older texts remain, and they tell a different story, a story of a God who fought death, brought rain, and sat at the center of a people's hope for life. If Baal teaches us anything, it's this: religious history is not a straight line. It's a series of edits, some meant to preserve truth, others to bury it. And when we look closely at the stories we've inherited, we might just find that the villain wasn't the god, but the rewriting of his name. Want more in-depth dives into ancient myths and how they were rewritten? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more historical clarity.